Welcome, everybody, to the Star Child Network today, a sunny and warm day here, the October 30th, 2011. Today I'm joined by Jim Self. Jim has a website, a YouTube channel, and a wealth of resources available to assist us on our path. Today he'll be talking about mastering alchemy and what it's all about, the consciousness shift, dimensions, and more. First, I'd like everyone, though, to participate with me in a short meditation. Close your eyes, clear your heart and mind. Imagine yourself sitting peacefully and take 2 steps down and rest inside your heart. Feel yourself move and sit in your chest or heart area. Sit calmly and feel everything around you. Feel your heart energy radiating and be calm. Picture light in your heart growing larger and larger until it fills your whole body and shines out from your body about 3 feet. Feel it pulsating and getting stronger. Now, ask the Holy Order of Protection to surround you and slowly open your eyes. So, Jim, welcome. How are you today?
Very well, Eric. Nice to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're delighted to have you here this Sunday. I understand that you used to be the Vice Mayor of San Jose in California. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. That's another lifetime, but that's correct.
That's awesome. I actually live downtown in San Jose, and so I'm somewhat familiar with the area.
Yeah. It's grown quite a bit. It's a pretty wonderful area, though, part of the world.
Yes, it's definitely a whole other world. So being the mayor, when you were younger, what drove you to want to become a leader?
Well, it's an interesting, everybody's path is always kind of fascinating, and mine is fascinating. I was one of these kids that grew up. See, like everybody, your psychic abilities, your spiritual abilities, your intuition, however you define that or call it, comes with the body. Everybody's got it when we are born. And then as we begin to acclimate into, life with mom, dad, teacher, minister, and how it works and what's good and bad and right and wrong and up and down, all the third dimensional constraints, many times, a kid, many times simply shuts that all off. You're sitting there playing at the table as a little boy or a girl, and you've got 12 empty chairs, and you're talking to them all, and somebody says, there's nobody there, stop talking to those chairs. And you look up at the big person, and you look at all the angels, and you look at the big person, and you say, okay, I don't really see them. And they never go away, but you do. You just stop using those skills, and your skills never turn off. And so for some people, that's a real challenge because you are living in a world that is not as kind as your spiritual world, and yet you are observing from that space. This is where a lot of people have challenges. And so they just simply turn off they numb out those skills. But I was one of these kids that didn't numb it out, and many of us don't numb it out. And I watched the world, and I watched the lies, and I watched the pain, and I watched the distortions, and yet I watched, but I didn't internalize those. But I was one of these kids that, I graduated, I think, 346 out of 348 in high school. They just kind of let me out because the world needed truck drivers, as the teacher told my mother once upon a time. But I was not better or really different than anybody. I just watched. I was very clear about there's more going on here. And then in a period of time, I'm older, but in the period of time of the kind of Vietnam War, I was in college in 1970. And at that particular time, Nixon went into Cambodia, and it was outrageous violation of just correctness. And for whatever reason, in that moment, like a lot of us, we all of a sudden have a moment where we wake up, we make a decision. And that was one of those instant, I have to do something. And that really kind of took me into a field of awareness. And out of that, when I was 24, San Jose was a big city growing, fastest growing city in the United States. We had 35,000 people a year moving into this most wonderful area of orchards. And I decided I wanted to be where people were making decisions for well-being. And it was a wonderful experience, those 8 years in the local government area, because I had so much passion about making things correct, doing it appropriately, and looking for well-being and community. And it was a wonderful experience, but I began to see more of how people didn't do that. They all said they wanted to do that, but the internal kind of third chakra, power, control, judgment, resistance aspect of us drove people into decision-making that was really not like well-being. And that's what you see today in the world very much. People can't even make good decisions about community and well-being and the purposes of what government was all about. But in that period of time, it was challenging, but it was one of the most valuable fundamental platforms for the kind of work I do now. I got to see myself on occasion make bad decisions and then really feel that I just did something that was not so bad in real terms, but it was inappropriate for me. And it was a tremendous learning lesson about making decisions and staying very clear on your path and recognizing something that I strive for and teach is kind of 1 + 1 is 3. How do you take every decision to the high road, to well-being, to a place where you can co-create and cooperate? Because when 1 + 1 is 2, sometimes you have push and shove and black and white and right and wrong. And there's not a lot of cooperation in that, as you can see in the governments of the world today. But when you can take it to the high road, as many of the indigenous tribes used to always do with their decision-making, you start to get a very different world to live in. And that was my foundation for beginning to recognize what the world would need 30, 40 years later. So, fun place to have learned my lessons.
So in that, and learning that and the events that happened to you during that time, is there any other significant events that kind of got you on your journey to focus on spirituality?
Well, yeah, one very major event happened. See, when I was young, I was 24, and on the city council, and my goal was to be mayor when I was 29. And it's funny, your ego gets in the way of a lot of things, but being 29, being the youngest mayor of a major United States city, as silly as that is, that was kind of a driver. And so I spent 4 years organizing my focus on doing the right thing, becoming very clear, very vocal, very much community-based, and doing things that were well-being for people. And when it came time to run for mayor, I was running for mayor. And being clairvoyant as I am and knowing a number of things, there was a point in time where I started to realize this is not what I want to do. This is not right. For me, it was not right. And again, that third chakra is a very powerful thing. It deals with the issues of power, control, judgment, and resistance. And my third chakra started hurting really bad. And the more I was on the path of being mayor, and it was very clear that I would have won that race. And I was running from the place of vice mayor. And I was getting sicker. And the more I got played, the more sick I got. And there was one time where I had this very clear conversation with the archangels, who I play with fully now. But they said, here's what will happen if you run this race, and you win. And there was a course of actions that went right through the California State Senate, right up to some higher positions of great authority in government. But what they showed me also was, in order to do that, you have to give yourself up. And there were steps all along that dream or that little vision that basically said it was very much like Darth Vader in Star Wars, where all of a sudden he lost his hand, then he lost a foot, and then he lost an arm and became very mechanical. And if you ever spend any time with many congressmen, for example, which I've done, there is a mechanicalness about them. There is this very plastic smile about politicians. I'm not beating them up, but it's just this: they've lost their arm and they've lost their leg and they've lost their identities. And in that particular space, when I saw that vision and that dream, it was really clear to me this is not my path. But at that time, I was virtually running the race of mayor and had raised a lot of money. And it was like, well, how do I get out of this? And that was the biggest challenge, is how do I get out of this? And I managed to get out, and I managed to send all the money back, and I managed to make a lot of people very unhappy by not running. But it was, again, one of these lessons to be able to do what I do today. Never shared that with many people.
Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. I also wanted to mention to everyone that you can post questions on the chat, and you can also call in at 347-838-8092. And so taking from that, we have a lot of younger children who are our listeners. What advice do you have for younger children and parents of younger children about teaching them how to learn to their inner, or listen to their inner guide?
Well, it's a very interesting thing about the young people, particularly the ones that were born after 1987, because 1987, some very big shifts occurred. We were on a path, the world, that would have brought many of the old prophecies into place. And by the year 2000, the world would not have existed anywhere near what you have today. And there was a set of choices that was presented to you as a soul, to me as a soul. And there was a point where the choice was, do you wish to continue on this path that is very destructive as you have set out on? And when we get to that point, we're going to not accomplish what we had wanted to accomplish, and we're just going to end the game and start all over again.